that's why this big upheaval was such a blessing to me, because I really had to look in to myself and what do I want in life? Who am I? So it really was actually like a huge blessing once I got through all the trauma of it.
So the last time we were here, we were talking about the whole divorce process, and you and I were just sharing about how it just it consumes you, right? It consumes you, and you just get in a survival mode. And at some point, for me anyway, it just kind of hit me where it was almost like the mirrors turned inward, right? And I had to start taking a look at my own life. And I don't want to say that was so intentional. It was probably more, I don't know, it just kind of came out of nowhere.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it gave me the chance to kind of stop everything else and really look at how I showed up in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I had never really done that. You kind of get on autopilot all those years. And I mean, it wasn't the greatest relationship. I mean, I didn't, but while I was in it, I didn't even see it.
Yeah.
So once I had that moment, those times of quiet and just kind of looking at myself and what I brought to the relationship, it was very eye-opening.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, was there some catalyst or some, I don't know, some turning point in that whole process for you? I know it was relatively quick, where you went from trying to manage everything, right? You had to manage, okay, now what do I do with my kids and my house and material belongings, possessions, to that time where now it's maybe things aren't as tumultuous, and you maybe have a little bit of quiet time. Is that when, for you, is that when it kind of just...
You just step back and you kind of reevaluate everything in your life and how you've been living. It was kind of how it was for me.
Yeah. Yeah, as I think about, and I know so many people out there have been through this divorce, and for every person, for every story, for every person there's a different story. And I know there's, we by no means have the corner on the market and understand, but I know that there's a lot of contrasting between your story and mine. I know that for me, I got so, I guess, mechanical in trying to move through all the things that had to happen for the divorce process. Said like mediation and her attorney and then the paperwork and then the kids and work and all these things that I just got into work mode, I guess. And it wasn't really until I guess I had moved into a house I was renting. That's when it just kind of reared its ugly head, because at night when I was home from work and maybe the kids were asleep and I was by myself with my thoughts, and that's when things really, I'll just say they really kind of started to get ugly. Do you feel like, was that your time, or were you able to just compartmentalize it?
So much of it is such a blur, but I think those quiet times when it was just me and the kids were off doing their thing, I really listened. I mean, I'm glad that I just really kind of paused and listened to that inner voice. And it's kind of funny. I didn't like audibly hear it, but I felt it. And it said to me, "You are right where you're supposed to be." Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really important to like get quiet and like kind of reach inward and listen to that inner voice, because that gave me a lot of peace. Because I had a lot of fear of the unknown, what's going to, happen, just being a single person again after so many years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. And I actually am a little bit envious that it was like that for you, that you were so in tune to maybe that inner voice. And I know, down the road as we talk more, we're going to get into, that still small voice in us, right? That intuition that really guides us, and we all have it. But, I think at that point in my life, I'm not even sure if I really knew. Well, I guess I knew I had it, but I didn't trust it. Right? I didn't know what it sounded like. I didn't know. I was confusing it with guilt, right? And I was confusing it with all of these other things coming at me. And so, by no choice of my own, I had to get quiet and sit with my own thoughts. And I would journal, but so much of that for me initially was not accepting. I wasn't at the place in my life where I was accepting or embracing the decision I made. After that, I was really at the point where now everything began. I felt unraveled. I was questioning. I was second guessing myself.
Well, sure. You had the kids were still in high school.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I guess one was actually in junior high and one was in high school.
Yeah.
But so there was this long time, even though I was going through counseling and which was really, really beneficial. There was just this months and months of guilt, and boy, what position did I put my wife in? What was I, financially and emotionally? What position was I putting the kids in? And I think that was probably the first real time in my life that I think I really began to have to take a look at my life. Because I think up till then it was just, I was going through the motions, right? I grew up, I moved out, I got on my own, I was working, got engaged, got married, got a job, built a house, da-da-da-da-da. And before you know it, 10, 20, 30 years have gone by. And I think that was my story. So when this all came to a head, it wasn't...
And that's difficult to unravel.
Wasn't pretty. Yeah.
That many years of a life. That's scary.
Yeah.
But I honestly, just hearing your story, and I know we've talked about this before, but it definitely makes you realize how hard it is on both people. Not just the person that, like me, like I didn't want the divorce initially. I guess what I'm trying to say is you wanted a divorce, but it was still hard on you. So I think some people get this false sense of, oh, they don't want to be married anymore. They've moved on with their life and la-di-da. It's so much easier for them. So it's been a real eye-opener for me to just look how difficult it's been on your side of the coin.
Yeah, it's there's always, you get so much advice, right? Like I know so I started searching for answers, right? And I read book after book after book and read, post after post on Google or whatever, just looking for the answer, right? Looking for, I don't know what I was looking for, but maybe I was looking for a way to not verify, but maybe substantiate decisions I made, or it was just an upheaval. And I guess that's the thing that I'd want to share with people. And, whether and it doesn't have to be male or female, but certainly from a male perspective, because there's not a lot of a support maybe out there. At least there wasn't then for men to really kind of go through this. I feel oftentimes we get labeled, especially if you're the one initiating a divorce, and like bad man, bad
right.
man, and well, look what you're doing, and we're not I just don't feel that there's societies in a place where we can really feel vulnerable and go get, be understood. I might be generalizing a little bit there, but.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing for me is what I didn't have. I didn't have this core group. I didn't have this core family. I had my family, but I didn't have that, what I would call a healthy support structure. And
I did.
Yeah, so I want to hear a little bit about that.
Such a catalyst to my healing. When you feel all that support around you. And your family was, most of them out of town. And so, all my family's still in basically the same town. And so, I had the troops rallied around me. And I'll forever be grateful for that.
So what was it like with your parents? Was there any sense of judgment or?
Oh, no. They just wanted me to be happy.
Yeah.
And, of course, there was a lot of anger because they saw me in the hurt stages. But I think they knew in the long run that I'd be better off. Because just looking from the outside in, people see things that you don't necessarily see.
Right.
And, I wasn't my true self. I really wasn't.
It's an interesting point. So did they, because it sounds like, and from what you've told me, you were just maybe unaware of how the situation had become, how the marriage had become over years. But
oh yeah, and that's why this big upheaval was such a blessing to me, because I really had to look in to myself and what do I want in life? Who am I? So it really was actually like a huge blessing once I got through all the trauma of it. And I think we still continually work through divorce and other angles of it your entire life. When you're linked with someone that long, there's always going to be ties emotionally that you were working through. But when I got over the initial stress, the initial drop of the bomb, it was really something that needed to happen for me in my life.
Yeah, obviously you and I have talked about this together a number of times over the years, but it just blows my mind how rapidly you kind of move through all these stages, right? From complete surprise.
Well, and like we said, you're never completely worked through them. You're always a work in progress, but I did move through it pretty fast, and I think it was just the support of my family, my friends, that inner voice of saying, this needs to happen.
Yeah.
This, I can't imagine continuing to live that life. Not that it was horrible. I just felt like looking back and looking inward, I just truly wasn't living. I was just like going through the motions like a robot every day through life. So to get out of that and then to get to experience a true deep love, which, there was love in my marriage initially, that, it's just different now. And
so I don't know if you're comfortable talking about this.
I don't think I am. Just from that statement right there.
No.
I'm a little, be careful.
No, I just meant was there any abuse?
Oh, no.
Was it, because there's verbal, there's physical, there's all kinds, right? And sometimes it can be very, like we've talked about, covert, almost like a gaslighting that really is a severe form of abuse. But it's so innocuous or so under the radar that you don't really notice it.
Yeah. No, no, I wouldn't say abuse.
Yeah.
But we just weren't good for each other anymore emotionally. When you're somewhere you're really not supposed to be, and the weird thing was it took me a long time. It took the divorce for me to realize that.
Yeah.
Because it had morphed into that, and I needed to get out and didn't know it. Until it was pushed upon me, and it didn't feel good at first. It was very scary, but wow, did life change, and for the better.
Yeah, I think you hit on something that really is so crucial, and you never know this going into it. And oftentimes, you don't have a choice, like you say, going into it. But it's that it oftentimes doesn't feel good, right? So I called mine when I like to refer to it, and I coined the phrase from an old book, old guy named Watchman Nee, but he talked about the dark night of the soul. And I think, like I was alluding to earlier, that was, I think, the first time in my life where I had to begin to deal with all my demons, right? So, but it wasn't just the marriage. And I don't want to say there was demons in the marriage, but I'm saying issues, but
it makes you look at yourself, all of yourself,
oh my gosh,
all of your life.
Well, it was at that point, everything was like on the table. So like growing up in a dysfunctional family, growing up with watching domestic abuse from between my parents, and watching this verbal assault, and watching, and like all of these things that you learn. Well, all people learn, but certainly I know males do. We learn to put it in a box and lock it down, and compartmentalize, and you move through and you move through, and
Oh, I did my share of that as well.
yeah. Yeah, but you get to the point where like it's gonna come out. We fool ourselves into think, well, we can just lock it away, but it's almost like squeezing a tube of toothpaste. I used to tell my kids this, you squeeze a tube of toothpaste, it's gonna come out one side or the other, and that's the way it is with trauma, emotions that you haven't dealt with, right, or refuse to deal with. There's going to be some catalyst in your life that's going to make it happen or make it come out, and then you don't have a choice, right? So, yeah, but I think we could probably talk about this a little bit more, because there is this, again, for me, it was a sense of like a steep drop down this hill to this dark night of the soul, where I spent a considerable amount of time, certainly more than I wanted to. Maybe in hindsight, I needed to spend as much time there. But, the old saying, for every, when the storm passes, there's always sunshine. But so there was that slow climb out.
It's really true. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely was for me. And man, it's a good feeling when you finally come out of that place.
Yeah, and it takes some people longer than others. For me, I know it was a slow progression, that kind of the phoenix rising from the ashes, right? When you look at you look at your today, or you look at your tomorrow, and you can't see how it could be better. You can't see how I couldn't see how I could be happy again.
Yeah.
I didn't even see that was possible. But yeah, maybe we should touch on this a little bit more on our next talk.
So much to unpack.
I know there is.
With all these feelings.
But and it'd be good if we get the audiences watching us to share their comments and their thoughts and what they went through, and maybe even things they want us to talk about, right, or cover. And so this would be great. But I think we'll come back. We'll visit this a little bit as we talk about, all right, how do we move forward and into the place where you could start feeling alive again, right? Because then that progression moves you to what we'll probably talk about is forgiveness, and forgiveness of certainly others, but primarily of ourselves.
Yeah.
So, good. All right. We look forward to our next talk.
All right. I love you.
I love you too.